hair in a mess. Show me you're the man, you get scratches on your hands. They show up to commands while you take me to the dance. Overtime, double pay, you wanna go out on a date. Tiny whisk and a big boy love. I got it all together, you were sent from above.
The biggest problem with me is that I don't know what I don't know, right? So I just, whenever I go to school, I get like exposed to all kinds of crazy shit. And I'm like, wow, okay, I didn't know about this. And same with like something, for example, like Max, working with Max patches and stuff like that is totally mind-blowing to me. Even though when I don't know what all those knobs really mean, but because I just work with my ears and I just do whatever. But I would really like to, because I have just been producing and not for a very long time. I would say 3-4 years very intensively. That is just what I've been doing, learning it and how to do it. But that means I've also been doing learning and doing things that were efficient and useful for what I wanted to do. But now I want to get into the performing stuff. And I feel like I've been limiting myself and not learning what there is more behind those knobs and buttons that I've always been twisting to get my sounds. So yeah, but I really like your how you think about the unpredictability in your music. But I just don't know how to put that into context with my pop songs and my rap songs. But it'd be really nice if I could do that in a live environment, or just as like a merge of producing and performing.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah. It's there's a lot there. Like, I mean, let me ask a couple questions. So in terms of like when you're producing a track, well, for one, how for as long as you've been doing this, how much has your own performance been part of it? Has that always been it there? But now that let's say you're doing videos or whatever, is that now where you want to up what the performance part of it is? Or where do those things relate? Like just the production and the performance themselves? Like how are they?
Like I have just been producing. That's it. Producing the track, getting my vocals and getting other layers of vocals and just mixing it all in there. Because what I've always been thinking about is just making albums, making songs, putting them on Spotify or whatever. But I think it's more interesting to have a video. So now I'm like, okay, I need to perform this, but I can't just have my track playing in the back and me singing, because that'd be like I paid a producer to make my stuff and I'm just singing on top. So I need to make it more authentic and me. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, so there's a few things, a couple references I'll just say now, and then we'll unpack them because it'd be interesting to talk about them further. But so one is, I'm sure you know, like the Imogen Heap gloves stuff. Like, have you seen her things, like her Mimu gloves?
Played the bass. I could still play the bass. Play my little twinkly sounds. Could play with the filters. I could change between different sounds with the pitch. And then when I finally remembered what it was I had to do, because the gloves had given me this space, and actually all I needed to do was play the drums.
Well, so that might be an interesting thing to talk about, because I think it covers some of the things you're interested in. Then Clipping, you know the group Clipping. It's like a hip hop group. He's got an interesting thing in terms of how he does their production. And then Sylvan Esso, which is a group, a duo, and so there's a couple podcasts as well, which I can link to you for this afterwards, where they talk about some of their approach. But I'll go through them. Those are three references I just want to say out loud so I remember them. But taking from one, maybe the Sylvan Esso one, because that's more straight ahead. I'll play a little quick example of some of their music. So he has a very live-centric workflow, and I think he uses the same exact controller you do, which is cool. So if you see like some live, I think they have like a Tiny Desk show that's really good.
My baby does it, baby. My baby does. My baby does it, baby. My baby.
what is it? It's an AKAI
APC40.
Yeah. Super cool because it's like you get a lot of knobs, a lot of buttons, and a lot of sliders. Yeah, the stuff that you choose to map to that is obviously you can do a lot of very powerful things with that. So it'd be interesting to see like how he approaches mapping and stuff in general. But one of the things that I found interesting from his podcast or his interview in the podcast that might be related is he'll have things that are on a grid and things that are off a grid. So the way part of how he approaches the live thing is where he'll have his live set and he'll have the tracks and the backing tracks and the bits like this that are already done. It's sorted, they're there and they're fixed. But then as part of the performative element, he'll have additional elements and textures and some things that are not on that grid at all. So it could be either synths that are completely separate or clock things that are completely separate, or these other things that he can then, while performing, I'm paraphrasing here, but he can engage with those things to add stuff. So for example, if there's like a programmed beat, there's for that kind of music, there's not much to be gained from him sitting there and like playing the beat.
And then there's been this slow wrestling with kind of, the nature of playing tracks, which is kind of, I feel like can get boring so quickly because you're playing recordings, which is cool. And there's a way to make it cool. But I think that for me, I need to feel like, this like sense of possibility, or I need to feel like I can like smear the paint around at any time,
Yeah.
So I've just kind of been slowly making it more and more smearable.
But I think part of the idea of having things that are on like the track, the things that need to be crafted are crafted and they're fixed or they're as varied as you want them to be. But then you have another layer of information, another layer of stuff that you can do on top of that can maybe liven it up. And then in terms of like pulling things out of tracks like that could be stuff that like maybe it still makes sense for you to produce your track as you would. Like, this is a track, I'm loving it, it's awesome, it's great. Now I want to perform it live. Okay, and now you go back and they're like, okay, maybe these bits here could be interesting to vary a little bit. This might be an interesting layer. And then how to do that is a separate question, but there might be aspects that you then go back and do. So that was one idea that occurred to me in terms of having fixed versus unfixed was basically the big takeaway there. That could be an interesting thing to incorporate.
I always look inside the mirror walls, zoning out until I become a doll. I try to get a glimpse of you and I, before I get up and walk out of the door. You should have never looked at me the way you did. Recklessly, I fell before I could have known. Now what do you need more answers for? It's me who's left figuring out before I go.
Have you seen this stuff before, the Imogen Heap gloves? Part of what she's talking about is a similar problem. For her, she's coming to it from a different place. But the idea of you create this electronic music, but then you're performing it live, and how do you communicate musicality? How do you communicate things that are interesting? How do you communicate some liveness with electronic music? And for her, a part of that was embodying it. So physically being there as the performer and doing things. So in her case, having these gloves that have these flex sensors, which in her case, you can tie to hand gestures. So if she does a fist, or if she does a point, or if she does like a drumstick move or whatever, all these gestures mean something. And then where her arms are and accelerometers, and then even her position on stage, etc. So I think in the TED Talk, so that's 5 years ago, I think it works fairly well. I think she's gotten a lot better at it now in terms of how the technology works in order to communicate it. But I think it can make for some interesting things where if she's, I think in one of the songs that she's doing, like she's recording, while she's recording it, she's doing this gesture, and then when it's done recording, she does this, or something like that. And as a viewer, you're watching it, you can kind of tell what's happening. She's like, oh, something's happening, and now it's playing back. Okay, now she's doing this with her hands, and that's playing drum sounds. Oh, I can tell what's happening. And she uses this to really make clear what it is that's happening. And then the third reference that I had there, I'm just going to blast through these references, and then we can talk about some of the bits.
Sure.
Was this group Clipping. So the rapper is actually, he was in what's that musical that everybody loves, Hamilton. He was in Hamilton. I don't like Hamilton, but he was in Hamilton. This is from a recent live stream thing they had. So it's two kind of producers. It's a bit of a mix. So it's basically the two of them make the music, and then he came into the project later on to add the vocals. It's quite interesting music. I quite like. I'll put this in the chat here as well. But if you have a look through some of their music, they also have a really interesting Song Exploder, which is a podcast that talks about process. So I'll paste this one in here. This will be worth checking out as well, where they talk about how they approach their songwriting in general. So that'd be interesting to check out too. One of the things that this guy has talked about is essentially they're both using laptops. Well, actually, I don't know if this guy's using a laptop at the moment, but there's a laptop in his setup. And he basically has a kind of a weird DIY version of Live built in Max. As in, like, he can launch clips and he can play backing tracks and he can do this stuff. But it's a little bit more flexible, maybe. They basically, you see some of more of their setup, and they have all this stuff. So like he'll have like a little foamy thing, and he's little percussive things. Or I think in one of the tracks they talk about that, like for all this like gristly texture, he has a box full of, if I remember right, like nails and screws with a cheap microphone just in there that he can just move it around and just like, and you get these textures that are part of the track, but they're different every time, as you can imagine, because you're just messing around with it. So it's a little similar to the idea of the Sylvan Esso, where I think there's a baseline of stuff where, specifically because the MC still needs to know, the rapper needs to know where the song comes in when we're going to the next section. So there's very identifiable clues, like the beat still comes in, a certain bass line is still there, but then a bunch of the other musical stuff is a bit more open, and they build these things in, like some of these texture things, or some, like there's this one track that has these like long bell sounds. So they have like these little singing bowls or something, and for the live version, he just, they're actually like hitting them to recreate those sounds. So stuff like this, it makes sense in the context of the music. So that was just a few things off the top of my head in terms of how like a couple maybe different ways to approach doing that that some other people have done. Then in terms of, we can talk about like more specifically about some of your tracks or how that might best work for what you do. But yeah, I just wanted to say all of those before I forgot them.
Very bass taste, a raspy voice. Dress up, buttercup, better cake my face. Flare on my tippy toes, wear the jewelry. Wear a nice coat, gold cut celery. Lady lotion, nightstand wanting.
I've been producing, last year I've produced like a couple of songs. It was also for school and also for building my album. But I just, like, I thought YouTube is broken. Like, you can't be a YouTube musician anymore. If this was 10 years ago and I would be like, okay, I'm going to start a YouTube channel and do this, it would maybe be worth it. But but now it's like YouTube has just become a library for all kinds of shit, you know? But like now, like I thought, okay, I'm gonna start putting things on Instagram maybe, or on Facebook, but those two are also dying. So TikTok is what seems to me like something that people are very, very active on. It's just that it's really hard to push through that algorithm. I don't know, I guess I was frustrated, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna start making videos now. And I told my brother about it, and he was super excited, and he was like, okay, we'll set it up. And I just started putting all the angles, and I know that my brother he's very versatile. Like he can program, and he's also an electrical engineer. So he can solder the wires and everything, program everything. So it's super great. So we just made something. I took a canvas and we put some stuff on it, like what is it called? An octopus. Okay, whatever. But we put lights and just experimented with the camera angles. And then the goggles was just something that we've always been thinking about, of making me into like, it's a different word for robotic, cyborg. Yeah, like, because I don't know, it seems really cool, and it seems to and it seems to fit like my sounds and all that. So we thought, okay, let's do a Cyclops thing, and have like goggles, but there are also already these goggles that have that Cyclops thing, but I love glitter. So so we just put some glitter on top. Let me show you. These are the secrets. So it's just inside here. It's just some sunglasses, and then we remove the glasses. These are just some paper I put for the LED lights not to come into my eyes, and just duct tape some.
Yeah. It works.
Yeah,
It works.
but yeah. So that's it. That's it. But it just needs to look nice, right, for the video. But it's a prototype. I'm wearing my prototypes.
Yeah. Well, that's how it goes, you know.
And then these gloves are connected to that, so I have to wear it as a whole thing. And these gloves are for drawing on the drawing board. It's like an iPad, but it seems so cool because the fingers are missing. It's just two. So yeah, but that's it. That's basically it. And I guess we have a lot of other ideas that we want to try, and just different designs and stuff that look super weird that we're trying to make. Yeah, but it's just something that randomly started. Just one day I was like, I'm gonna start making videos now. Deal with it.
Yeah. How long ago was that?
That was 4 weeks ago.
Really?
Yeah, when I say I want to do something, it's just usually just things just escalate really, really quickly all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great.
I didn't think I was gonna make gloves and these goggles. I thought I was just gonna make some simple videos, but I don't know. One thing leads to another, and then yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting thing with something like TikTok. Like, I don't have a TikTok, but like I do see like TikToks that like get shared, or you know, you can because you can like see them without having an account, which is cool. So you know, like seeing yours or other people's ones, it's a very obviously it's a very visually forward thing. Like you'll see the clip and you're like, do I want to click on this? No, and you keep going. So like it's like just that snapshot or the thumbnail that like can really capture you. And then having like very elaborate staging, like what you've had in some of your videos, where it's like it's such an aesthetic that and it really comes across well with the music that's with it as well. So like it really adds to the like what you're hearing. It's not just like I don't know. It's a hard way to put it. Like it's not like a music video because they're also shorter, so it's a different thing that's happening.
Yeah. Like that was also one of the things that I thought. You know, lights. If I can't find like some nice angle or whatever, maybe I should just put crazy lights and I don't know, just a lot of movement in the video, because I don't know, kids these days love lights and all that. I was like, okay, let's work with that. But yeah, lights, I love lights too.
And at the moment, so the lights in the goggles and the gloves are being both controlled by just the lapel mic.
It can be controlled by the lapel mic, but I can just turn them on and put like different patterns or sparkles or colors and all that stuff. So,
but using from like I guess the like little remote or whatever, like just the normal, or are you controlling with the computer?
It's with the computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So then that means you can do like, yeah, there's all sorts of things that you can do, which is great.
Yeah.
Have you done anything where you're controlling things with like, are the lights being controlled by Live at all? Actually, do you use Live? What do you use for your DAW? Like Ableton?
No. I use FL Studio. But right
you.
now I'm learning how to use FL Studio because I'm taking this hybrid ensemble class with Mauricio, and there's 10 of us and we're playing. It's like crazy. I really love that class. And I'm learning how to learn Ableton now. So I'm learning how to sample things for the purpose of performing in that class.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, yeah, but Ableton seems like very fitting for me in this context. And I need to like get my shit straight and really get into Ableton.
Yeah. I've not used FL. I used Fruity Loops back when it was called Fruity Loops, like 15, 20 years ago, you know, like a long time ago. I didn't use it a lot, but like, yeah, I've not used FL Studio ever really. Like, but yeah, I think for a lot of the stuff, particularly of what you're wanting to do now in terms of doing things live, I think Ableton Live is probably going to be very, very useful for you. Even things like without having to get into Max or weird stuff, like I don't know if you've got into that stuff already, but I don't do a lot with this, but in live you can have follow functions. So let's say a clip plays back, so you trigger whatever. When it finishes, there's a little section where you can pick what happens next. So it could either loop, it could go to the next clip, but then you can have a probability of doing random ones. So you can have like a whole bunch of variations of a BV or a beat or whatever it is, and they'll kind of go around and they'll do variations of it every time you play it, which is, you don't have to do something crazy in order for that to happen. It's just built into live, which is great.
And like the board that I have is also super compatible with Ableton, so it just maps automatically or I can change things. But right now with the FL Studio, I started using FL Studio because it was back in the day when I got it. There was a cracked version, and it was the only DAW that wasn't buggy as a cracked version. So that's why I've been using it. But right now for performing, what I do with FL is I just, like how you said, I put my stamps in there, and I put something that I want to manipulate in some way, like add delays or some other type of effects. Yeah, that's what I currently do, but I know there is more to it.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of stuff that you can do. Like, if you watch some of the Sylvan SO live videos, I actually don't know how he sets up his controller at all. But even having things like where you have like channel faders or an EQ for different bits is probably a very useful thing, because it's a big controller. You have a lot of things that you can do. Yeah. So you could very easily, like, okay, in this particular performance, I want to adjust this a little bit, or I want a little bit more, a little bit of less of whatever, and it doesn't. It doesn't have to be like the 10 magical knobs that all do fantastic things. You want those, but then you also might want some like more subtle stuff. Like I just need a little bit of this or a little bit of that. Yeah, in terms of like other stuff, I don't know because if you like lights and stuff, there's a whole world of things in exploring, like DMX lights. I don't know if you've worked with any of that at all. So yeah, DMX is. I was wondering what was going to come first. Is a rapper, but there's also DMX, which is it has a disambiguation page. All right, so yeah, DMX. It's basically like a standardized thing for lighting communication. So like we have a couple DMX lamps, and with our DMX lamps, we can control the red, the green, the blue, and the overall brightness as 4 separate numbers. So you can send them separately, and then like with some of this stuff, you can send like programs. I want to do a pattern and all that. But you can do a lot of stuff where the music will be tied to it, because like when this beat hits, rather than doing kind of what we're doing with the lapel, is rather than having it follow audio, you can have it be like, to use a simple example, to say like you have your LEDs, that could be like part of a pattern, like 16 notes or whatever can go like that, and when there is a beat, it moves. You can do things like this that are the actual controlled by events in a way that is much harder to do otherwise. I don't know how FL Studio works with DMX, but something like Live, I know people have made Max for Live devices that you can communicate with Live via DMX. So like in your live set, you can program lights, which is quite easy, because then you can just copy like the whatever patterns you have and put them in the DMX and then mess around with it. So that could be an interesting way to really like do like a lot with lights. But what I found is very useful is a lot of venues that have lights are all DMX as well. So I used to do some performances where I used DMX lights, and I performed at some venues where they had like the whole huge performance space had DMX lights, the whole roof. So I was able, it took me a bit to figure out what the channels were. Like I had to figure out what was what, but then I was able to control all of the lights in the hall, which is like, I have 2 lights and now I have like 50. So it was pretty awesome.
Got your attention, I don't need to see the fire. Turn on your radar, I'm Wally through and real. Rudimentary bitches, but they caught up in this wire. Eat that shit up, smooth, stuck in your larynx. Smack around my mark, my arc, my way. That was essence in a bottle, it's what I got. So sprinkle 40 stitches on my nose.
Well, yeah, potentially I would love to have like a costume and all these goggles and everything for a live setup, like the reason I think one of the reasons I also got into wearing these goggles is that I was trying to figure out what to wear for each and every one of my videos. And I was like, okay, I simply don't have that many clothes to wear. So, so I'm just going to wear black. And I'm going to put some stuff on my face, to make it interesting. So I think that's one of the main things to how we got into making these things. But yep, I think potentially I would love to, because this is a prototype, right? I would love to make something more sturdy and things I can easily put on, because right now I'm having my brother to tie things on my head and if I have to walk, he needs to unplug it because I don't want to break it and stuff like that. But I want to make something sturdy for the future and for our future projects as well, to think about something more stable, something that doesn't break and something that is easy to carry, easy to plug, easy. But yeah, like if it was post COVID, then I would go with that persona of wearing all that gear and stuff.
Yeah, because I think that I mean, obviously, like the performer like this performance persona has only existed in the time of COVID, like from 4 weeks ago. But yeah, so like translating something like one of the TikTok videos out to like a full stage performance, it becomes like it's a different thing. Like it's moving around, like you're not just in a camera frame potentially. So there's different things to do that. Have you guys started working on what the next prototype will be? Like what will be different about next? Like I guess you said like having it be more sturdy. What else are you planning on changing?
Things like designs, because we're trying to do both things, like making it sturdy, making it work, but also thinking about designs. Things that are easy to wear, because right now I put some shoelaces on the on the glasses so that I can tie it at the back of my head.
I don't know what you're using in terms of the communication, but I imagine something wireless would probably be very comfortable too.
Oh yeah, of course.
Because that solves a lot of problems. I mean, then you have to deal with batteries and things, but it's still better than like having this one little cable that's tied to your computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this. I'll just mention that in the chat because it might be worthwhile looking at later. This company XIO. I have one of these, which is kind of cool. It's a little like an Arduino. It's basically like just like a little board. You plug a battery into it, and then you have a bunch of inputs and outputs that you can connect to lights. You can connect to sensors, so like things like the glove and stuff. And then it sends all the information over a network to your computer via Wi-Fi. So you can just plug this and just control it like quite easily. And it also has built-in motion sensors too. So on top of having the all the input and output, if you wanted to have motion stuff, it comes built in with motion. But something like that would be interesting to look at in terms of being able to do wireless stuff, but without, once you want to go wireless, you have to do some things differently and it becomes a little bit more technically challenging, but like something like that does it and it works. And yeah, like whenever I use it, it's quite easy to use.
You're as coordinated as a newborn horse. Purple apple, pink apple, I got poison to my core. It's hard to walk to the car on my door. Basically, I got both Twinkies stuck in the nearest peepholes, but I do saw boogies and I sleep on it. Get my brain clear, then I rest my feet on it.
How many songs towards your album do you have?
I think I should have because I'm working on 2 separate ones. One is more like I've been doing this thing at school where I pick an ensemble in residence. Last semester I had a trombone player, and the semester before that I had a double bass player, and I just got to take them got to record with them a lot of samples, and I just made songs out of those, so that I would put in a separate album maybe, because it's more lighthearted stuff, and then I have the rap stuff that is more like crazy. So in terms of how many, I would say maybe I have 5 towards the lighthearted stuff and 10 towards the rap stuff. But it's like I'm building.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a good amount of them. Yeah, I heard the one with the double bassist was really awesome. Like that's a great
Oh,
track.
really? Thanks.
Don't you let me go. Just take it slow. Take it slow. Take it slow. Bam, bam, we just show everyone how we go. Low. Take it slow. Take it slow.
It's cool that you're able to work with, like, I guess, ensembles or performers that come to work at the school, because it's something that you don't often have access to as like a musician, like just doing stuff. Like it's great to be in a circumstance where you can have musicians like that are coming, they'll just work with you on something, because that's not something that you come by every day.
Exactly.
But yeah, if you can say a little bit about how like you came, like what was your process for that track? Like how did you work with a double bassist, and like what was your thinking?
I guess that whole class, in the double bass class, I think we were allowed. We had our own double bass at school to play around with. As a class, as a group, we could just go and not smash it, but there are scratches. There are many scratches on it now. But I just got to record my own samples. That's the first thing, and my own crazy stuff. I don't play an instrument, like none. But so I just got to sample a lot of these things. And for the double bass guy, I did write the notes, and I had something different in mind when I didn't have the samples, but as soon as I got the samples, I don't know, I went crazy, and I just started stretching it and cutting it, and that's how it just came to be, the song. Yeah.
Did you then go back and have another, or like the time that you had with the double bassist, was it like play this stuff and then you recorded it, and then did you go away and edit and then come back and have them do more, or you did everything from like the one recording session of like having them play?
This was like pre-COVID. So pre-COVID, right
Wow.
before COVID, we did get to play with in class. Like we had to write our pieces, and then James would come in and play our pieces. But then COVID hit, and we thought, okay, we have to switch things up, and we were able to record with him and just send him, and he would just send us his recordings, quality recordings of whatever we requested. And then I just had to make a mix and mix my whole song into with a bit double bass and everything. So that's how it went. Yeah, but in a normal I think the normal course would be to just have him play it in class live.
Yeah, it was great hearing, because I think Mauricio had mentioned that, okay, like you worked with a double bassist. So when I was gonna get ready to hear it, I was expecting something more like cut up samples or something that sounded a bit more like produced-y. But it sounded, and I think there's a lot of that, but it sounded like he really got into it, which is really great. Like the bass playing was like, it added another bit of energy to the track, which really comes across nicely. So that I was curious, like how you got that performance out of it, because it doesn't sound, to me anyways, it didn't sound like a classical double bassist playing like, play these notes, and they're like, okay, dunk, 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 dunk. Like it wasn't that. It was like it had a lot more than that.
I think he played it as energetically as he could, and I also requested him to record it with different mics, with a dynamic and with a condenser and everything, because I found that very handy in my production process. Not post-production, what is it called? In my production process. And so I got to some of the samples with the mics had like lower frequencies and more bassy sounds that I put underneath the more high frequency notes. And another thing I did was also cut the notes and put them in a grid so that it sounds more in a grid. That's what I did. And I like to have things in a grid and metered, but also not. Like I love rhythm, but I love it to be chaotic as well. So that's what I kind of worked with, I think, when I was editing it.
Yeah, it works really well. Like I quite enjoyed it. Like Mauricio showed me that, and I think another one Queenin? Is that? I don't know if that's the
Oh
right.
yeah, Queening has like a lot of samples that I took, like tools and stuff that I have around the house, just objects, close up objects. I just recorded it and compressed it, and that's basically it.
Watch my body. Cuter, yeah. Bring me a spatula, flip you over, nonsense inside. Why you like a T-Rex? Gobble, gobble like a goblin on my pineapple. You be can't, I make you uncanny with my twist, flick the wrist. Okay. This a fine dish, add it to my recipe list. Somebody, but if you're not jealous, then don't act like you eat that. You told me to shake before you, so why you fizzle and shaking? You're on top of my cake.
Post-COVID, like having live performances, I'm curious to see how you incorporate some of these things, like the TikTok aesthetic, or like the goggles, the cyborg. Does your cyborg version have a name? Like, is the cyborg a different person?
Like right now, I put my artist name as Hini, so I'm just gonna go with that. But I don't know. You're telling me something now that I'm like, wow, okay, I haven't thought about that. That seems cool.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
there's like you as the artist, and then there's like potentially, I don't know, it's your stuff, but like the cyborg could be a character or whatever, like it's or another persona,
Yeah, no, that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, nice. I mean, is there any other kind of bits that you want to talk about, like
Have you worked with Max?
Yeah, like I do quite a bit with it, and I like a lot of the things that I do, particularly now, tend to be like a mix of things. So like I'll have like, oh, there's a snare and a microphone on the snare, and like that makes these cool sounds, and then there'll normally then be like a software side of it that's attached to it too. So I'll have like, oh, these are interesting textures, and then I'll have a bit of code that I'll write that will like help me do something with that to kind of, the overall thing will have bits of code, bits of an acoustic instrument, often some things that I've made physically, or to kind of make an overall idea. But I've done a bunch of working with Max over the years, starting off similar to you, like not, I think my very, very, very first version of Max, like however long ago, there was no crack for it on Mac. I think there was a crack for Windows, but there was you could reset the demo. I think some of the old school cracks, like you had 30 days, and then before 30 days you had to reset the demo. So I had like a version of Max like that for a little while, and now I'm an adult and I own Max, but back then I didn't. But I think, yeah, like I started off like just playing around with it and doing tutorials and not really knowing what I'm doing, just connecting random things, and it took me a long time to get somewhere where I liked what I was doing with it. At the time, this was like how long ago would that be? Like 15, let's say 15 years ago. It was a little, the kinds of things I wanted to do with Max, it was a little harder to do then. So like a lot of tutorials, a lot of the YouTube wasn't nearly as popular. So like now you can go on YouTube and find like tons of videos explaining things, which is great. That wasn't there. So anything you wanted to learn, you either had to learn from other people, or if you did the tutorials, you learned how to like make a knob that when you turn it, it turns the piano notes go faster, which is like cool, but I wasn't interested in making piano notes go faster, So it took me a long time to find stuff that I wanted to do with it. And for a long time, it was just doing that, like, oh, this is kind of cool. Oh, this is kind of cool. What if I took this bit of this and this bit of this, and now it's this other thing. And that was a very useful way to do anything in life, but specifically Max. I found doing Max that way. Do you do Mac, or like, is there any Max as part of your course there? Like, do you study Max there?
We had the one course that it was an electroacoustics course, but also a computer music course.
Mm-hmm.
And I was briefly exposed to Max. So now I have patches that I can just open up and do things with. But I don't think I can put these boxes myself and figure out what does what.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like similar to when I was starting with producing, there was like such a learning curve for me to learn how to do the things. And with tutorials online, sometimes you're so deep into something that you don't even know what it is that you need to look up. Like it's and so most of the things on FL Studio or with producing, I've tried to figure out myself, because I didn't know how to specifically put in the vocabulary or something on search. So with Max, it's similar. I don't know what it is that I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's something like when you said at the beginning, like that's everything in life it works that way, and it's kind of funny, but like even with let's like using Max as an example. If you like Max, you can do anything you want in the world. It's like, oh, okay, I don't know. You open a Max patch that's empty, and like, what do you want to do? Is for one kind of paralyzing, because like, what do you mean I can do anything? Like I don't know what. So having some kind of friction or knowing something about something can help you have ideas that are interesting beyond it. So like, oh, you can sample your voice and then make it go really fast or slow, or depending on how loud you are, it changes the speed of it. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then like, then you build something like that and like, oh no, okay, this sucks. I don't like this. But then you have an idea of like, okay, maybe next time you can go into these things. But like with anything in life, it's hard to know until you start messing with it. And I think having that playfulness or sense of exploration is super useful. And I think for me anyways, I'd say it's even more important than like a theoretical understanding. So I'm not a computer scientist. I didn't grow up with that. I'm not an electrical engineer. I didn't grow up with that. But I but like from my 20s or whatever, like soldering DIY projects, learning how to do a little bit of Max. But everything was kind of hacky. Everything was like, I don't know what I'm doing. So you just explore and you play. Where I do have a more formal background with music, like theoretical, like with music theory. These days I don't use it at all, but sometimes that can be quite difficult, where it's like, okay, like I want to make these harmonies, but like, oh, is it this chord? Is it this? Do I want this harmony? And you start thinking like some of the theoretical knowledge can sometimes get in the way. Or where I'm at now, like you can eventually push past it. So like you get the theory and you stand there and then you throw it away, and then you can work with that. So with some stuff like music theory, I'm well past that at this point. But something like for electrical engineering or computer science, I think that playfulness is super, super useful, because you can end up with coming up with ideas that wouldn't have. I'm smart enough to know how to do things, but I'm dumb enough to not know that I shouldn't. Something like that. So like you can kind of figure things out, and because you're not scared of like, oh, you don't do that. This is not how you do it. Because you don't have that fear, it means you might do things that are like kind of interesting or unique, because because of how that works. So I think that can be very useful for stuff. But yeah, with Max patches specifically, I literally, like, I think one of my first Max patches I used with performance, like, was some random patch that I think I found from somewhere that a friend of mine that had studied Max, I was like, okay, I want to be able to start and stop it when I hit the space bar. And they kind of, it's like two objects, super simple to do. It was like two objects, he put it in, and I was like, okay, I saved it. And then like I got up on stage with other stuff and I opened it and I was like, spacebar, and I was like, it was doing it, and I was like, oh, this is happening, it's cool, you know. And like it did very little, but it was like I was able to use it, and it felt like magical, because it was such a mystifying thing. And then slowly over time, like, I learned a little bit more of how to do things, but starting with something like that was very useful. And I think particularly if you do start transitioning to using Live more, there's so many Max for Live devices that are like super interesting, because it's basically like Max, but as a live plugin. And there's things that people have made that you can do all sorts of crazy things, and you can still use it in Live as you would anything else. So you can do automation, you can do mapping to your controller and all this stuff, and you don't have to. You can open it up in Max if you want to see how it works, which is super useful. But at the same time, you don't have to. You can like use something that someone has built and then like do these crazy sounds. So that's another thing to explore, to do as well. But like, what kind of, so yeah, you don't know what you don't know, but what do you know with Max? Like, what have you done with the Max patches or like that you had before?
I think it's similar to what you just said about being able to hit the spacebar and that it works. Like, that's the biggest fear that I have, is that things work on my desk, and when I bring them outside, it may not work, and I will not know how to fix it. You know, so. Yeah, I just want to know a little bit, like, do you have one tip for me, as I'm not a computer scientist or anything either, like, I don't know anything about coding, Like, do you have like a tip for me to learn things in a way that it'll keep me safe in in like in like a life setting that I know what to do and how to handle
Yeah,
that.
I mean, the first bit is that like nothing's ever safe. Like, and I think even because I think with computers, people have a lot of fear of that. Actually, that's not true. I've never had. I was gonna say I've never had a Max Patch crash on stage. I've never had a performance stopped because of something went wrong with the computer. I've had something crash, but I was able to work around it. But as I play guitar, I've had strings break. I've had sticks break on stage as a drummer. Like things fall over. Like everything goes wrong on stage. Like that's what happens. So that's unavoidable. Like there's no version of that doesn't happen. So being okay with that is cool. I think it's a little hard if you have like a backing track. Like if the backing track gets fucked up, and then it's like you're just on your own. That's rough. That's hard to manage. And but that can happen for any number of reasons. But I think in terms of let me show here. I showed something like this. So like this was like a super basic crash course. Like when you make objects,
awesome.
there's cables, there's things you connect. So there's a way to do that. But then like the second bit was okay, you can drag samples. I've got like an audio file, like I've got a kick and a snare. You like literally drag it onto the window, and then you can play that back. You can connect it, like play it with your keyboard. But basically, one of the things that a lot of stuff when you're learning Max tends to be focused on how the language works. Like there's different types of messages, there's different types of the way that you connect objects, like all of these things. Like anything is complicated and things going, but I think what's most useful is to be able to do things where you can just kind of do stuff. Like I'm recording a bit of my voice. I'm recording my voice into a little looper in Max. I can play it back. And just being able to play like and something, I mean, some of this stuff you can do quite easily in other programs, but just being able to record stuff real quick and do stuff and just being able to play with stuff and being able to map any of these things to whatever. So I can just, I don't have a controller here, but I could just map all of these things just with my MIDI controller right now and play with all of these things. But basically having a focus on making sounds with whatever it is. So like literally, so in Max it would be the yellow cables, like the audio cables, like plug things together that have yellow cables and produce sounds that, and then be like, you know, that's good or no, that's bad, and then play with more of that. Stuff like this is super useful, and it's stuff that's kind of difficult to do in another program. So this is my voice. So as I talk, I'm controlling basically this white noise. Or I can do stuff like where the pitch of my voice is controlling so I'm just singing a synth there, but then I could take, let's say, like how like the pitch of my voice I can use to control the amount of reverb, or the louder I'm singing, the faster the delay goes, or any stuff like this, which is something that's possible with some plugins, but it's not like it's not a common thing. Like you can do compression and sidechain, but things that track your pitch. So like the higher the pitch you sing, it can do something, etc. But yeah, so I'll send you these patches. But like sound, make something that makes sound is like a good tip, just because it's very easy to caught up with Max with things that don't make sound. So there's definitely some interesting things in there that hopefully will, give you some ideas, I think, going forward.
You shot me with all the info right away, but that's super helpful. I really like the DMX thing too.
Yeah.
I guess something I really want to look into.
Yeah, if you look up, there's a bunch of, and particularly if you look at like a lot of performers these days, like they'll have like a stage design, like there's like things, all sorts of stuff happening. All of that is DMX. Like so I think lighting design is like a whole thing that's interesting, but like on a small scale, like it's very easy to have a DMX controller. You can have even cheap ones. There's ones that are DIY. And then DMX lamps are fairly inexpensive, and you can have ones that are like ones that are only white. There's basically like those LED strips. You can have things like that as well, and all sorts of things like this. And it's super easy. I don't know in FL Studio, but in Live you can basically program the DMX to be controlled from Live.
I guess with the DMX lights, if I would make a setup here for the videos, like one of the things I worry about sometimes is that things will become too, like every video will be similar, you know, in terms of a setup. Like I could move things around, but sometimes it feels like for video content, for things to look similar, like I don't know how to, because I just have a small space that I put a camera this way and this is where it looks cool.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, even with color, there's so much that can happen with color. So even if you just have like a wash of color, like this video is kind of pink now, and this video is kind of blue now, and this video is kind of red now, and like that, even as you're scrolling, it's like, oh wow, that's kind of striking there. So there could be just a color to like a specific video, or a subtle color. It doesn't have to be like full on. And then in the context of the video, like if you have dynamic lights, if you can control the lights, you can do all sorts of things. Even stuff like, let's say like your goggles are reacting to your voice. So that could be a whole idea, which I think you probably have something like that now. Or maybe like the lights are flashing with response to like the bass line. So like as the drums go, like this is doing stuff. Yeah. The louder you get, the color moves from red to blue. Or, you know, there's all these kind of things that you can do. And then each one of these like behaviors or like a scene is like an idea. It's like just like you would have like this song has its own unique character. The stage, your costume, or not costume, your persona is the identity of that one thing. And even though it might be similar, like maybe a lot of your songs have drums and bass and you rapping in it, but like they're all different. Like it doesn't, like it's not so much the same, but like so you can have the same ingredients but make them into different dishes or whatever. And I think because of like the TikTok thing, because it is like the portrait view, thankfully it gives you a narrower space. You don't have to worry about having like a epic space behind you. So you could just have like you have basically like a narrow slice that looks really good. Then yeah, just what you choose to put in it. But based on the videos I've seen so far, like I think you have a good aesthetic sense of that. So
because TikTok is really great and I like it, but it's just very demotivating sometimes because your video is just thrown out and to see what happens with it, and you know, and you don't even know what demographic that gets thrown into, that you don't get any likes. Because I find that most people who like my videos and share and comment are people between 13 and kids 13 and 18. But yeah, I need to get more on that highway, I guess, and to just keep putting videos out which I put a lot of effort in and not get those views is sometimes demotivating. But yeah, I want to explore other platforms to get like a community or something for myself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the other platforms?
I don't know, because just maybe things like I don't know if Twitch is still a thing, but there's Discord now that I was talking to one of my classmates with the other day. That you can build a community on. And I also have that TikTok view. So now that I have to put the landscape, it's like, oh my God, okay.
What do I put over here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I don't have Facebook. I don't like Facebook, and Instagram I'm kind of quitting. But YouTube, I quite like YouTube. I do watch a lot of YouTube, and I like this is going to be on YouTube. You know, like it's a longer video. It's a different kind of thing. Yeah, it's funny for me. I mean, I think it's just maybe it's my age or something, but I so much more prefer putting a video out and then like not knowing what happens, or like with my webpage, I'll put like a blog up or whatever, and it does stats, but I don't check it. I don't really I never remember how to check the stats and find where that is. So I just put the blog out and that's it. Whereas like if I have like Twitter or something like that, I'll put a tweet and then I kind of like I feel forced to go back and look like it's got another like, who's got a like, it's retweeted, and like my brain gets occupied with that stuff.
Yes.
Which I personally don't enjoy so much. And then as you said, like you're fighting up against algorithms and things. So I so much prefer just like making a thing and then like not having to think about it. But that's not so much what happens.
Like I need to know what the trends are for the younger crowds these days. Like back in the day, it was YouTube for me as a teenager and a kid, but now it seems to be TikTok. And I don't know what else is going on. Sometimes, like now, I'm getting older. I'm like, wow, I'm what are kids into? I'm not a kid anymore.
Yeah. In like 10 years, you'll have like whatever, like the boomer TikTok generation of like people like TikToking, where it's like people aren't doing TikToks anymore, but it's
Yeah. True.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
We will be queening. I'm queening shit. I say what I say. I do what I do. Mirror, mirror, extra cute.
I will just dive deep into it and yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there'll be less things that you don't know now going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, like send over the videos and audio and all that kind of stuff, and then
not know more.
Yeah, there'll be more. There'll be more that you won't know then. But
Oh yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's
Not
true.
knowing is infinite.